Hello? Check, 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 check. Yeah. Um, hmm. That's a bit dramatic. Now. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Is this working? My microphone, okay, good, awesome. Welcome to Sociology. It's 10:52. I'm going to start at 11 o'clock, at 11:02 actually today. Thank you for being on time. But there's no point in doing this many times. So I'm going to wait until 11:02 to start. Thank you. Ooh, but okay, now it's recording. So 11:06, welcome everyone to Sociology 191, Introduction to Sociology. My name is Antoine Goulem, but for most of you, you don't pronounce my name the way I like to hear it. And so I go by Tony in Ontario. I'm from Montreal, and I'm a francophone, and in Montreal, all francophones and even many anglophones can say my name the way I like to hear it. So since I've lived in Ontario, which is a long time now, I go by Tony. Many of you, or at least some of you, are in that same boat as I am. You have a first name and a last name that some people, absolutely including me in some cases, don't pronounce it the way you pronounce it. And I want to start with that seemingly trivial feature to introduce the sub-theme of the course. So it's Introduction to Sociology, something about inequality. And inequality characterizes many of the vectors through which social relations operate in human societies. And they have since, for all of the societies for which we have any evidence, going back historically, there is dispositive, clear evidence that some vectors, some aspects of inequality characterize the relations among people in all of those societies, including going back to the small amount of evidence we have for so-called hunter-gatherer societies. Inequality, so far at least, is a fact of society. One measure of that inequality is a linguistic difference, right? So we are doing this in English. That's the language of instruction of the college. That isn't in itself automatically and damagingly unequal or unfair even, but it does have as a consequence that there's a difference among us. For some of the students in this class, English is not their first language. It's not my first language, but I'm old now, and I learned English right after I learned French. So I learned English growing up, and I learned French growing up. So I'm effectively a native language speaker of both of those languages. But for many people at the college, almost certainly for a number of people in this class, English is not your first language. In fact, for many students, for many international students, one of the reasons they go to and they sign up for, it used to be go to, right now it's sign up for post-secondary education in Canada, is precisely to improve their English, their ability to speak and read and communicate in English, because under current circumstances, English is the dominant global language. And that linguistic inequality, that linguistic difference, is one mechanism through which inequality continues to be perpetuated, reproduced in the world right now. So, one way that manifests itself is through the ability to identify and to even just speak to each other. I have to go by to a very, very large extent. It absolutely is my choice. I could easily put my name Antoine Goulem and just powered through it, and out of laziness and all kinds of irrelevant issues, I go by Tony. But it brings up the point that's connected to why it is that I think it's in your interest ultimately to speak up in class. One of the outputs, one of the outcomes of a post-secondary education is to socialize students into adopting attitudes, in addition to skills and knowledge, adopting attitudes that will allow them to pursue the different things they want to pursue. Now, students are surveyed an enormous amount, and the college and all kinds of other institutions are very keen to understand why it is that people do, so at least some of the things that they do. And we have very good reason to believe that students go to post-secondary college. Well, let me turn it over. I'll flip it over for now. Why do you think most students, what's the number one reason that would be the result of students being asked why they go to post-secondary school, university and colleges? I'm asking now. So if someone could turn on their microphone or type in. For jobs. So what's the connection? Yes, that's a good starting point. What's the connection between college, university on the one hand, and jobs on the other? Right. So there are some jobs that having a university degree has more or less nothing to do with anything. But there are loads and loads of jobs where a specific university degree is required. And then there's an even wider range of jobs, more or less famously, but I think ultimately unhelpfully, jobs that don't even exist yet, jobs in fields that are only emerging right now, entry into which requires a post-secondary degree. And so the participation in the labor market is a key motivation for students to enroll in post-secondary education, get through post-secondary education, and leave post-secondary education so they can enter the job market. And one of the things that employers continually tell us, and the college, not me personally, but the college through its organizations and other parts of the college are in close and constant touch with employers, with past employers, and with potential employers. And one of the key things that employers look for in employees is a willingness to talk, a willingness to express their views, a willingness to demonstrate engagement with what's going on in the workplace. Now, once you're hired, the stakes can be very high. And for some people, for any number of reasons, they find it super easy to engage in that way. But my experience with students is that for the most part, they don't. And that has been made much online classes produce so-called classes. I'll get to that in a little bit. This particular form of communication is even less responsive to and less productive of that one particular outcome that almost all of our employers and all of the feedback we get from employees, from employers who've hired Seneca graduates, and also from Seneca graduates who stay in touch with the college and who respond to the efforts of the college to better understand how their education helped them get a job and how their education helped them to move forward in their careers once they did get a job. And communication is always, or almost always, a key aspect of that. It's harder to do it under these circumstances, but we're struggling through this. Now, in a minute or two, I'm going to turn to, well, actually, I guess I'll do that now. I want to spend a few minutes working our way through some of the key aspects of the professor's addendum. So I'm going to hopefully go to my screen and post that on the screen. So is the professor's addendum on your screen? I don't know how to get to my chat. Okay, good. Thank you. So, now how do I get rid of it? Okay. Right, so Introduction to Sociology 1, Social Inequality. We're going to meet every week. Well, we're going to do this. I'm going to be doing this every week from 11 till 12. And for the rest of the semester. And I want to scroll down to, first thing I want to talk about is the textbook. So the textbook we'll be using is by Robert Brim, and the title of the textbook is SOC Plus, Soc Plus, and I'm using the 4th edition, and you need to buy, or get your hands on anyway, the 4th edition. And the earlier editions are not dramatically different, but in the first component of the grading, there are going to be 5 online multiple choice tests. These multiple choice tests are produced by the publisher, not by me. And so the publisher provides faculty with a database of multiple choice questions. And I haven't checked those multiple choice questions to see if the current database questions are drawn from the 4th edition. So what I'm saying is it's possible that there's material in these tests that's only available in the 4th edition that won't be in the 3rd, 2nd, or 1st edition. It's your responsibility to get access to the 4th edition. I don't know, it's never come up. I have never had a student tell me that one of the questions, never. I've only been using the 4th edition for 2 semesters, but in the last 2 semesters, it hasn't come up where there seems to have been a question on the multiple choice tests that wasn't in the 4th edition, but that's on you. So there will be 5 multiple choice tests based on the textbook. Now, just so for the purpose of more or less transparency, I understand when you take a multiple choice test, the book's open, right? If you have a paper version of the book, you open the book, you read the question. It's set up on purpose by me, and I'm sure my colleagues who do it this way do it for this reason. I want you to read the textbook. I think that it's important for you to, in order to complete this course, you need to read the chapters in the textbook. And one of the ways to get students to do it is to do it this way. There's 5 tests, 4% for each test, and the question will come up, and you have the question, and you have to read the textbook in order to give the answer. It's not a great way to read the textbook. It's not, and I expect everyone to read the textbook for other reasons as well. But this is one extra way I have of encouraging on the one hand and rewarding on the other the students who do read it. The way I do expect you to read the textbook is to open it up and read it, first page and the second page, and read it in order, and then take the tests. I think you'll find that your results are going to be better. The results both in the sense of understanding the subject matter, and also the results on your tests. If you read through the chapter once and then take the test, much of that information is going to be available to you just from your memory of having read the text. By going back over the text a second time, a third time, you will be reinforcing your understanding of what it is that you've read in that text. There's excellent evidence of this from fairly recent, in the last 20 years, neuroscientists who've been doing research on memory have been able to demonstrate conclusively that human memory is improved by repeated tasks of reading and repeated encounters with material. And so most of the testing is done at a lower level of cognitive complexity than even an introduction to sociology textbook. But it's clear from memorizing numbers and understanding simple stories that humans, not just students, but humans, children, all the way to people with dementia, across sort of the full developmental scale, recall matter more quickly, they recall it longer, and they understand it better if they read it multiple times. So in part, my decision to have these online tests available to you is in order to maximize the chance that you read the chapter a number of times, partly for that reason. Secondly, the next chunk of grades that'll be generated to get your final grade for this course is through, there'll be 4 discussion assignments. They're already online. And for these discussion assignments, you watch a video, and then there are a bunch of reading prompts. So most often they're quotes from the video, and I ask you to respond to the quotes, either agree or disagree or comment, or the intention there is the reading prompt is meant to generate a response on your part. And these discussion assignments have 2 components.
Sorry, Sir Professor, I don't know if you can hear me.
All 4 of them are graded out of 16. 10 of the 16 marks are based on what you have to say about my comment. And then in addition to that 10 marks, you also have to comment on 2 of the responses from your classmates. So there's a staggered deadline for these discussion boards. You watch the video, you respond to one of the prompts by a certain date, and then 3 or 4 days later, over the next 3 or 4 days, you have to add 2 comments in order to get the full, in order to have available to you the full 16 marks. Next, there will be 2 news analyses for this semester, each worth 10%, and I will I'm waiting to find an appropriate news story in order to for the assignment. And then there's a class reflection paper and a group literature review. But I want to jump in and I want to start doing sociology right away. And so for that reason, I'm going to switch to now the news story I asked everyone to look at, if I can find it. Okay, so I'm going to have to do something a little bit different here. Here it is. Now I hope that works. Now, is the CBC News story on the screen? How am I going to find out? Old enough to choose? Okay, great. So, did any of you look at this? Do any of you know what this is? I'm just curious. Okay, good.
Sorry, sir. I don't know if my mic was working.
So what do you
Can you hear
think?
me, sir?
Do you think it's a good idea? So now, keeping in mind, one of the ways that this format operates, and this would be the case in class as well as in person as well as online. Sociology, all the science more generally, is a kind of dual exercise. There's the general and there's the particular. So in this case, I'm going to ask a question, and I want you to consider the question from 2 analytically separate but almost necessarily overlapping perspectives. I want you to answer. I'm going to ask you, do you think it's a good idea to lower the voting age to 16? And I want you to think about it from the point of view of your own personal situation. Now, roughly speaking, there's 2 options. Some of you are Canadian citizens and can vote. Others of you are not Canadian citizens and you can't vote. But the question makes sense for both people, or at least cognitively makes sense for both people. One of the other articles that I was going to post, but I let go, is in the United States. In the United States, there's also some consideration for lowering the voting age, and we could think about, does that make sense? Is that a good idea? What are the different things? So now, for those of you who have read the article, and for those of you who haven't read the article, do you think that it's a good idea to lower the voting age from 18 to 16? So let me just see the chat.
Hi, sir. Can you hear me?
Huh. I don't hear anything from, let me just see.
Yeah, I just want to test. Is my mic working? Can anyone hear me? I just want to double check.
I can hear you.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Yo, Harpal, bro, can you turn your mic off, please? Because it's kind of distracting to the whole class, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, I can't hear you. No, I wonder what. That's great. Are you? So could someone turn their mic on and Okay, so let's see how we're gonna do this. Great. Okay. I muted Harpal. I don't know if that's going to help or not. But now, can someone turn their microphone on to see if I can hear you?
Hey, sir, I'm just testing your audio.
I saw the unmute button go. Now, let me just see.
Is it working now,
I
sir?
know what's wrong. Okay.
All right.
I changed offices at home. So now, can you try one more time, please?
Hi, sir. Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you. Okay.
Perfect.
I have anyway, okay, so now I can see. My eyes are gonna move. I have a big screen TV behind my laptop, but my sound is connected to it. So anyway, every once in a while, I'm gonna look up and it might seem weird, but we'll just have to get used to it. So now, we've maybe sorted out the technical stuff for the time being. Do you think it's a good idea to lower, in Canada, to lower the voting age from 18 to 16?
Well, I haven't read the article or had a chance to because I didn't see it, but I honestly don't agree that we should change or lower the age of voting in Canada to 16.
Right. Okay, now I've lost the pictures here. So great. So I didn't see who it is who, maybe, here we go. No. Anyway, any other views? Anybody disagree with whoever it was who said that? But I wish I could.
I read the article and I don't think that the reasons they gave for lowering the age were sufficient.
Right. Okay. That is a different response to the first response. I appreciate both of those responses. And one of the goals of doing it this way is to distinguish for you and to demonstrate with you the importance of sources. And so the issue of lowering or raising the voting age is an issue of democracy, among other things anyway. It's an issue of democracy. And on that basis, people's views about it are obviously not going to depend entirely, at least, on this one news story. So people are going to have views about whether or not it's a good idea to raise or lower the age of voting from 18 to 16, separately from the particular details of this article. The second response from, I forget who, I couldn't tell who it was who responded, but who it was who responded for the purposes of the point I'm making right this minute doesn't matter especially. It's a narrower, more manageable issue to answer the question, did this article provide good enough reasons to lower the age? Rather than just the more general question, is it a good idea? It's a more manageable issue from a evidence point of view. Now, for those of you who have read this article, and in particular, for the person who responded there, what reasons do you remember? What reasons were offered? Because I think the reasons were very solid, but it is the case that I think it's a good idea anyway. But I think the argument is a good argument in addition to my position on the overall thing. So, what is the main reason that you remember they offered for lowering the age from 18 to 16?
Just me, the person who responded previously.
Is that Javier?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just going off of the point they made, that they say that they trust people of 16 to engage in employment, drive vehicles and such, and they say that they hold such a responsibility already should they have the ability to vote as well. But
Right.
I didn't think that was enough, because that can be used for anything almost. A person of 18 can drink and a person of 18 can vote. But are they saying that a person has enough responsibility to work, enough responsibility to drive, and consent to sex, then shouldn't they have the ability to drink as well? I brought it as that. That I don't think that with what they're trying to say with voting, that they have this much responsibility. Just because they have responsibility doesn't mean they can be trusted with it, almost.
Right. From a Canadian perspective, there was a charter argument, and so in Canada, the Canadian legal system, since 1982, the Canadian legal system is based on a Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And there is currently a case before the courts challenging the constitutionality of setting the voting age at 18 years of age. And the legal argument is that that law is incompatible with the Canadian constitutionally guaranteed rights of equality for Canadian citizens. And so the burden of proof, part of the problem is part of the problem is about the burden of proof. And in an earlier court case, the justices argued in their decision that the burden of proof is on the government to show that there's a legitimate reason to set the voting age at 18. Now, okay. Oops.
May I say something, sir?
Yes, please.
Yeah, no, because also he gave a proposition that said, oh, because when they said, oh, there's a study that shows, teenagers, adolescents can be more rational and judicious than like other, at their own age, and they shown the link to the research studies, and although all 16-year-olds cannot necessarily make good decisions in voting booths or doctor's office, one study concluded the decisions in these contexts on average would be as logical as adults' decisions. But the essay's like 9 pages long, but like nobody's gonna read that though. So, but yeah, for example, but that's not as convincing, I would say. But also,
so did that
yeah,
study?
like most people are not gonna read that though.
Most people aren't going to read it, but let's say that study was correct. I didn't read it either. I looked at it, but I didn't read it. Let's say that study is correct, and it turns out that scientifically speaking, it's been demonstrated that 16-year-olds are just as rational as 19-year-olds. Would that argument be enough to defeat Javier's challenge? So Javier said he just doesn't think that the fact that 16-year-olds are allowed to drive, have sex, and have a job is a good enough reason to let them vote. But if scientists have shown that 16-year-olds are just as rational as 19-year-olds and 42-year-olds, then first of all, would that convince you, Javier? And for the rest of you, would that kind of reason be enough to change your mind? Or would that kind of reason be enough to, if you hadn't thought about it before, to have you agree that there's no good reason to set the age at 18? Luke, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I thought you were talking to Javier. Or is it Javier? I was like, okay. Sorry.
I missed.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't understand. Luke, what is it?
No, I thought you were talking to Javier, because would that convince you, Javier? I thought you were talking to that also.
Right, but you brought it up, so, and Javier didn't respond. So, how do you think it should be lowered to 16?
I don't know, like I can go on for like 10 minutes, but it depends. But in a legal context with like youths and stuff, but I don't know because I've never really immensely researched this issue a lot, but I could like go on about it like for a while, but yeah, in my opinion, not like yeah, I'm like 50-50, I would say, but I'll see about it.
Right.
So
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you saying that you see reasons why we should and reasons why we shouldn't?
yeah, because I would say like because there's people obviously who are not as like wise as like adults who are not as wise, and they can have extremist views as well, or like they vote for very irrelevant parties that have no like influence on the Canadian federal parties or the provincial parties, and then they're yeah. It also depends on what their profession is and what they specialize in, especially within um, the subjects in humanities as well. If they know anything about lawful essays like from the past, if they can read those kind of if they have an idea of that type of literature from the past and ideas can have like an influence on our democracy and the judicial system as well. So
But it's worth it's. I want to distinguish for everyone between two different issues. One is who should vote at all, and the other one is, given that everyone over 18 gets to vote, are there good reasons why people under 18 can't vote? Perhaps a more important discussion, perhaps not, but perhaps a more important discussion could be or should be who gets to vote in the first place. Just as an example, I think, with all due respect, Luke, I think you're going down the wrong path here, and I want to illustrate a little bit what I mean by that. I have a PhD. Should I get more votes than someone who only has a grade 10 education? Or should, because I'm highly educated, whatever that means, does that mean that I'm more entitled to have a decision to participate in how our society is organized? I don't believe it does. I absolutely would never, I would not want Canada to be run I wouldn't want Canada to be, the government of Canada to be elected only by people with PhDs. I think that would be a nightmare, a terrible, terrible idea. I maybe know more PhDs than you do, but it's not a personal thing. I think, I mean, I believe in democracy enough, and I think democracy is a good system, not primarily because it allows better educated people or anything along those lines. There's other reasons why I think democracy is a good system. So the issue that the article was talking about is not ideally captured in the title of the story. Old enough to, well, in a way it is, but it's not immediately obvious, I think. I've gone through this with many, many different classes. This has been around for a long time. And almost always it's the same kind of debate among students. It's about who should vote in the first place, not about, it's kind of weird that they decided at 18. When I was a kid, the voting age was 21. It was lowered to 18 when I was about 10 years old, I think. So it wasn't a direct issue for me, but it was 21 from the beginning from 1867. It was 21 years old until I think 1971. Another change in the voting pattern that is very difficult for many of us to really fully understand is it wasn't until 1949 that women could vote in Quebec. For all of Canada, it was 1920, I think, that women were allowed to vote in federal elections. But for the first 50 years of Canadian history, women couldn't vote at all. None, zero women could vote. That to me seems insane now. And I think for most people, it seems insane. Most people in Canada, it just seems insane. So there's two issues, and the sort of intro to sociology point I want to raise by having this conversation is it makes a difference to how it is we think about a particular issue by how carefully we frame the question. And both frames or multiple frames are always going to be part of our the work of sociology. The broader question of what is democracy is an important question, and the narrower question is also important. Given in Canada that the government is organized and society is based on the Charter of Rights, is it incompatible with that charter to have a law that says that only people above 18 years of age can vote? So those, the general sociological point I want you to come away with after reading the article is for you to check your own understanding of how it is you're responding to these, to this news story. Pulling the camera, metaphorically speaking, back a little bit also, it's 2022 and we're in COVID, and we're doing this on Zoom. Social media, so where I'm going with this is the role of the media. Media have a massively influential impact on many, many aspects of our lives. And it's crucial from a sociological point of view to understand, to acknowledge, let's say, understand might be too heavy a charge, but we need to, we'll be in a better position. Each one of us individually and us as a society will be in a better position to respond to changes if we can more clearly appreciate the impact that media has on how it is we're responding to all kinds of situations. So the CBC has one view, this article is from the CBC. There are other sources of information for this kind of thing. And one of the major consequences of social media is there's been a massive fragmentation of sources of information. You're presumably, most of you anyway, if not all of you, are basically too young to remember before the internet. Is that right? Is that true? Do you think of, I mean, when you think of information, is the internet the first thing that you think of?
Are you talking to me or the class?
Pardon?
Are you talking to me or the class?
Everybody.
Oh, okay. I'll listen to myself.
Right. And so that's a new thing. And so the internet represents, and I'm not a media, my own academic background is in philosophy. I have a PhD in philosophy, and I focused on the epistemological foundations of the social sciences. So that's my background. And I'm an old man, so I lived most of my life without the internet. So I'm not an expert on the internet, and it might be the web rather than the internet. And the terminology matters, but I'm talking about specifically social media and the difference in, so in say the first time I voted would have been 1978, I think. No, 1979, I turned 18. So, and in 1979, there was an election. I remember being thrilled. I was pleased to vote. I grew up in a political household. My parents talked about politics. I've been interested in politics my whole life. I'm still interested in politics. So in 1979, it was newspapers and television news through which almost everybody got almost all of their information. And cable TV had only just started, and most everybody got their information. Most everybody who looked for information and found information got that information, that political information, through newspapers and the TV. And there were only 5 or 6 channels, and there were only 4 or 5 newspapers. So it was a much narrower pool. Now, 3 clicks and you can get a newspaper from anywhere in the world. You're all, I'm sure, much cleverer than I am, and you probably can get a lot of this stuff without having to pay for it, which is great in my view. There's so many sources of information, and that's changed the dynamic of how power is, how different interest groups are able to pursue their interests. I'll put it that way. Okay, so the first, my first goal for today's class is to hopefully demonstrate to you that sociology operates in between questions and answers. Let's put it that way. And what I want to end with is a consideration of why I think you should care about the question of whether or not we lower the voting age from 18 to 16. So my guess is, well, here, let's do it a different way. What percentage of the people who are listening right now do you think give a shit one way or the other, whether the age of voting goes from 18 to 16? So I want you to consider for yourself if you care one way or the other. And do you think, knowing or not knowing, probably anyone else in the class, what is the likelihood that other people in this class care one way or the other?
Sorry to interrupt quickly. I just want to, by what you're saying there, do you mean care as in if someone asks them, they'd give their opinion honestly and debate it, or do you mean care as in actually go and vote to make that change?
Well, I asked you first. In a way, that's what I want to get to. That's an important distinction. I think most students and most people would take what I said to mean the first of those 2 options. And I want to start with that. So at the level of opinion, I'm asking you to speculate about what you think other people think about this issue. And there's a sociological reason for that. There's a sociological reason. I want you to abstractly consider that we have opinions of our own views, but we also have opinions of what most other people think. A side example: if you're a fan of football, like soccer, most soccer fans tend to overestimate how many people care about soccer. So if you're a soccer fan, you think, well, most people, everyone I know is crazy. Not me personally, but there's a temptation to exaggerate how widely shared this is. But you could find out more or less how many people care about soccer. And it matters. Soccer clubs want you to care about their club. They want you to buy the jersey. There's all kinds of reasons why it matters. And there are ways to make sure that you care or don't care. Or there are ways to increase the likelihood that you care or that you don't care. On voting, the government says it wants, and I believe it, but that remains to be seen. The government says it wants everybody to vote. Everybody who's legally entitled to vote, they want everyone to vote. But not everyone does vote. The government spends tax dollars on making voting easier, making voting safer, encouraging people to vote. Resources are devoted to this. So something's at stake. I want you now to go from your own individual view to the broader group view, and I want to try to I want to demonstrate to you, I want to get you to see that there's a connection or a possible connection between your own personal view, the view of people in this arbitrary sample of the population, and larger things. So does that clarify a little bit, Javier, what you were wondering?
Yeah, it does clarify, but it also raises more questions. Like, are we asking people randomly, do they care about the situation, or are we asking them if they care enough, or what their decision is? Do they think it should be lowered or it should stay the same? Or are we asking if they care about the situation as a whole? Like, are you interested in this this topic that's going on at the moment?
Right. Yes, exactly. All of those are that's sort of doubly correct. Those are all issues, and they're all separable issues. They're not automatically the same issue. But the part of what I wanted to do is caring seems to be, and in many ways it is, the kind of minimal threshold for consideration. And I want students to practice abstracting from that minimal threshold thing. So students, people, not just students, just in this case, we're engaged in a classroom thing, not a classroom, we're engaged in a course exercise here. If I'm right, there are students who are listening to this thinking, oh, for God's sake, make this stop. I don't give a shit about this. Is this on the, that kind of thing. And there are some students who, they think that partly because they don't care about this issue. They want me to talk about something that's going to matter for the course, or alternatively, something that matters to them. Does that seem plausible to you? I'm asking everybody in general. The other way to ask is, does anyone in this class think that absolutely everybody in this class cares about whether the voting age goes from 18 to 16?
Do you mean publicly, or like in their own homes? Like if I had to speak to a person one-on-one and they would tell me, no, I really don't care about this, who cares? It's not my concern, I'm past the voting age. Why should I care who they let vote? I don't vote anymore. But if I'm in public and I raise the question to a person and I make it more formal, I bring a mic and I ask someone, their opinion might change immediately and be like, yeah, I care, it's such a great importance to the country, That's what I'm saying. I think majority of the class would say yes, they care if it was a public, if it was in front of a lot of other people. I don't think they'd be willing to disagree with the view in public, but I think in their own home.
That's a perfect way to frame it. The first version of the question I'm asking you to consider would be to just consult your own intuitions. As soon as I start talking about lowering the age from 18 to 16, do your eyes start glazing over? No? Or is it something that you privately, internally connect to any, just it twigs up? That's interesting, or what a crazy idea. Because it counts to care if you disagree strongly or even moderately. If you have an opinion on this, that meets the minimum threshold for what I'm trying to get us to consider. And what the second way I want to approach this is I'm asking each one of you to ask yourself, do you think that everybody in this class cares a little bit, just a tiny bit, about this issue? I think no, I don't think that everybody in this class, I think there are people in this class who, in fact, prior to this thing, had never thought about it and don't particularly care about it one way or the other. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot of international students from Punjab and Pakistan and like many Middle Eastern countries as well, and Europe. A
Yep.
lot of like Asian European countries, and because maybe this issue isn't that indispensable in their country, and a lot of them they can't really speak on behalf of it. But maybe since now you're talking a lot, you're discoursing on it more often, maybe they'll start taking interest in learning the voting. And but a lot of them still they're not citizens, but if they stay long enough, they might get a citizenship. So yeah.
Right. Excellent point. But the issue of caring is a very low bar, right? So still, Javier's distinctions are all super helpful for the kind of pedagogical point I'm trying to raise about sort of subjective understanding of your interests versus a more objective measure of how society operates. For example, one of the reasons that is often raised in favor of lowering the voting age from 18 to 16, not just in Canada, but in all of the different places where there's some movement to lower the age from 18 to 16, is the idea that because I'm not sure that I agree with any part of this, I'm just trying to articulate it for you. Because younger people care more about climate change than older people do, lowering the age from 18 to 16 is more likely to force governments to act on on climate change. And that could be seen as an objective reason as opposed to a subjective reason. If there's a bunch of ifs in that claim, and if those ifs are correct, that would be an objective reason, even if you personally thought democracy was not your problem, or even if you're talking about a separate country that you don't even live in, that under some circumstances you may never visit even. If lowering the voting age in the United States contributes to lowering global carbon emissions, then it'll objectively improve your life. And for that reason, maybe you can begin to care about it subjectively. It can go in both ways. It can go from subjective to objective and from objective to subjective. Another example, the way I used to raise it, is for people in post-secondary education. I think if more young people voted, universities and colleges would be less expensive. I might be mistaken about that, but that'd be one reason why you might go from not caring to caring. So do you see the connection between the subjective and the objective? Because that's the crucial thing. The crucial thing about the social sciences, about sociology, that doesn't come up as immediately in the natural sciences. Nobody worries about what an electron, like no physicists in a laboratory are worried about, well, are the electrons' feelings hurt, or this kind of thing. In the natural sciences, they just measure things and weigh things and calculate things. In the social sciences, for the most part, earlier or later in the process of trying to understand phenomena, what they need to do is they need to make connections between the subjective manifestation and the objective manifestations of what's going on. Partly, the voting age isn't going down from 18 to 16, partly because 18 to 25-year-olds don't vote as much as 60 to 70-year-olds do. In Canada and in most jurisdictions that I'm aware of, young people don't vote at the same rate as older people do. Young people don't vote today at the same rate, at nearly higher rate as we did when I was 18 to 24-year-olds voted at a higher percentage than they do today. Is that for objective reasons or for subjective reasons? Is it just the way many people my age, but not me, believe that, oh, it's kids today are lazy or stupid or indifferent and so on? Or is it instead the way Spanish anarchists used to say, there used to be spray paint, tu vota, tu idiota. Voting is stupid because democracy is rigged. Why bother voting if it's always going to be the same policies that ever get put through anyway? Okay, so admit and.
But I don't believe that that's the case.
Good,
I
I'm so
believe-
glad. Okay, go ahead.
Because to me, when I became of age, my biggest worry was voting because I didn't have all the information in high school and in elementary school, because that was always a conversation that we shied away from. It
Huh.
was something that we didn't talk about as much. Sure, we were given like an ability to go to these websites and read about them, but the moment we phrase the question to our teachers what they believe, they don't want to talk about it. They don't
Huh.
want to tell us what they believe. So
Right.
then we are stuck in a situation that we don't know what we're supposed to believe to vote in that instant when we
Huh.
become of age. So that's why I feel like most 18 to 25-year-olds aren't voting as much, because they don't know what to believe and they don't know what to figure out themselves yet. I think they're just still trying to learn and who to vote for and who, like, that they're trying to navigate that part of their lives at the moment, and that's why we don't vote as much.
Excellent. So has that changed for you, Alexia? Do you, have you,
I feel like
become-
it's changed a bit because
Right.
I've had that open conversation with like specific family members, and when you have that open conversation and you say, what should I believe, and then they tell you, here's the information, figure it out. Like when people give you ways to find information, it makes it easier. It makes it a lot better to navigate where you should vote and who you should vote for. And I remember I had this question with the recent vote, and I was like, who am I supposed to be voting for? And I remember I had a family member look at me and say, why don't you take a quiz, and it'll tell you on a scale
Huh.
which party to vote for and which party you are closest to believe in beliefs with.
was that the
Because
political
then-
compass?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. And then when I did it, I looked into more of what they believed in and more of what they wanted to promise and stuff like that. And it made my vote a little bit better because I was given a way to find who I was supposed to vote for.
That's awesome. The political compass. So when I taught sociology last semester, and I used the political compass as part of the class. But I want to try another sort of move. I want to point out one tiny thing to connect it to a big thing. One of the features of sociology that's different from just, say, chatting is that sociologists develop a vocabulary that they try to they try to sharpen the vocabulary to make it as precise as the concept that the terms are denoting. And so there's an attention to, on the one hand, there's an attention to the vocabulary that's used to make the claims. And you said one thing, Alexia, that I'm not sure how careful you said something about giving you information as opposed to you going to get that information. And it's not always easy to tell why it is that information is made available. And sometimes, maybe always, but at least sometimes, information is made available to people for different kinds of reasons. And so one of the things about sociology is, and one of the reasons I used the CBC story as a jumping off point, was to get people to consider and reconsider and analyze and be skeptical at least a little bit about the sources of their information. That political compass thing, I like it, but it's not perfect, and it's a great starting point. And the idea, some of what I'm hoping to accomplish through the course is to get students to see that they have a responsibility and they have an opportunity, and those aren't the same thing, to go out and find more information about all of the different things that are going on in their lives, about climate change, about lowering the voting age, and so on. So I'm glad, Alexia, I hope, and another claim you made that, again, I'm not 100% sure how carefully you said that. If I remember properly, if I remember accurately, you said something about it made your vote better. By that, did you mean that it made your vote closer to what it is you thought you were doing with
What
your
I
vote?
meant was it gave me a little bit more clarity
Right,
on
good.
where
Yeah,
I should go. Like
yeah,
it gave me the opportunity to look into where I was closest to and
right.
be like, okay, these are the values that they have and these are the values that they have. Which ones am I
Exactly.
more
Perfect.
clear on?
Yes, that's great. So did you feel a bit more comfortable that at least you were voting for something that there's a better chance?
I feel like this time around I was a little bit more comfortable with voting than I was when I was 18. Because there was an
Okay.
election when I was 18 and then there was a recent election.
Right.
And I feel like I was more confident in this election when I voted versus the last election.
Good. That's great. And it's that the difference, the subjective difference that you're describing there is an important feature. Many people are not as self-aware as what you've just described, and many people, not just with respect to voting, but in all kinds of different things, don't attend as carefully to what it is they're doing as perhaps they should. And one of the things about sociology that I'm going to try to enforce and reinforce is the nature of the connections between the subjective and the objective here. And a great deal of the effort that on the topic of voting and political parties hire people who are professional media people, and their job is, what do you think their job is? They have one job. Their job is to get you to vote for their party. The political party, the Liberals, the New Democrats, all the political parties who have enough money to do this, do this. They hire professionals, they hire trained people, not to make Canada a better place. They figure that's the party's job. But the party's job, the party can only do its job if they get elected. So they hire people, professional people, but people whose job is to just get those people to do that, to deliver the votes. And I think that has a terrible effect on democracy, and I think that has a terrible effect on society in general. It's a free country. It's sort of a free country. We can disagree about this, but one of the ways they do it is they make it harder, Alexia, for you to attend to your own doubts about your ability to vote properly. They want you to feel like you were always already going to vote whatever way it is you end up voting. They want to make it familiar and comfortable and easy. And one of the ways they do it, it's a terrible thing, I think. I think it's an anti-democratic thing, is they want to make you like your candidate, as though what this is about is that person nice? is that person like you, and so on. And they want to take the politics out of politics. And so I'm going to partly try over the course of the semester to demonstrate different ways that that operates. But the way you raise the issue, Alexia, I think is super helpful. And attending to your own, to the gap in your own understanding of aspects of our society is a super important thing. And we all benefit, and we all would benefit if we were more attentive ourselves. And the thing I want to finish on, I'm not normally going to go this long. I think that that is also a great strategy for all of you to bring to your coursework, your student experience. I don't like that vocabulary, but this is valuable time. I don't take your time for granted. And in the coming weeks, I'm also a separate track that I'll begin to introduce next week. I'm going to try to convince you that the best way to understand what's going on here is to see what you're doing as work, in the sense that it's crystal clear if you're able to spend 1/1,000,000th of a second thinking that what I'm doing is work. In what sense is what I'm doing work right now? In what are some of the senses in which what I'm doing right now is work? There's an obvious, immediately obvious sense, and then there's a couple of other perhaps less obvious senses. Five or six more minutes and we're done for this week.
All right, so you're helping us do work. No, you mean how yourself you're executing work?
Yes. What is it? What is one of the ways that what I'm doing right this minute counts as work?
Okay, so you're proposing the idea that we must take into consideration that why this issue of voting should matter in our lives, since a lot of us are adults or are about to be adults, I guess. No, I don't know, because as my third semester, so I'm not sure, but you can help us, since you brought up this issue, this can help us consider, oh, maybe I should take that quiz that Alexia mentioned earlier, so it could be more advantageous for us to find out our creed, our political creed, and also, yeah, I guess that's all I have to say.
But I'm not positive, I don't exactly remember, but I've been preaching this stuff to my children their whole lives about politics, it's important, democracy, blah, blah, blah. When I was doing that, would you consider that work also? To the degree that that's the same thing, except that you're not my children, is it work in both cases, or is it something else? What I had in mind is I'm getting paid. This is my job. I get paid to do this. It's work in that sense. But it's work in some other senses also. And Luke, you identified one aspect of those other senses in which it's work. I mean, you might say a bank robber is at work when she goes into the bank with a mask on and a gun and she gets money out of the bank. But in lots of other senses, it's not exactly work when the bank robber robs a bank. Work is getting paid to do something, but from a social point of view, not all effort is productive. And also, and far more important for the angle I'm going to try to pursue, there's loads of effort that doesn't get paid, but on which society depends. And the most well-documented version of that is all of the work that is done mostly by women that's unpaid, without which the world would not work. In the family, in the household, there's an enormous amount of necessary effort expended that's not directly remunerated, without which daily life could not go on. So is housework work? Many of us argue that to deny that housework is work is to arbitrarily distinguish it from other sorts of efforts solely on the basis that it's being paid for. Arguably, but I'll leave that part alone. And what I think is it's worth it. And in many ways, what you're doing right now counts as work, just work you're not being paid for. Work, perversely, that you have to pay someone in order to accomplish. And the reason, the connection that I'm going to try to develop for you is that for many of you, hopefully for all of you, after you're done at Seneca, you'll go on and you'll go to Western University or York or somewhere else. You'll get a university degree. And after that, you'll go and you'll get some great job and you'll participate in the effort of that organization that you're working for to do whatever that organization does. And the organization will benefit and you'll get a salary. And the organization is going to hire you partly because you have a Seneca college diploma, and then you went on with your college diploma and got a degree, and the skills and the changes that occurred through that process made you a the person you are that's able to participate. My nephew right now, after he graduated high school, and he graduated in high school last year, and in September, instead of going to college, he's apprenticing as a carpenter. He's getting paid. He's getting paid to learn how to be a carpenter. How does he learn to be a carpenter? He goes to job sites, and I don't know exactly, I'm not a carpenter, so I don't know, but he's getting paid to learn how to be a carpenter. That makes sense, doesn't it? I think that makes sense. Right now, you're paying to learn how to, it's difficult to describe exactly, but I think what you're doing is work. And so the reason and the connection that I'm hoping that you'll be able to see is that the more you actively participate in this effort, the more you're ultimately going to get out of it at the end of this process. And so I appreciate Luke, I appreciate Alexia, I appreciate Javier for turning on their microphone, for engaging in this effort. You benefited from it, I benefited from it, and everyone else in this class benefited from it. That's not the only way. Many of you didn't talk, but you listened actively, you thought about this. Others, passive passengers, you're just coasting right now. I hope you'll be able to hear me when I say you're doing yourselves a disservice if all you're doing is coasting along, waiting, hoping that I'll say something that you recognize as that's going to be usable for you in some casual, easy way. You need to put some effort out here in order to get some benefit back from it. We'll see how successful I am. I mean, all of that pedagogically stands independently of my claim that this should be understood as work. That's a separate thing. All that other stuff about active engagement, all of my colleagues agree with. Everybody who teaches agrees with. So now for next week, I want everyone to get their hands on the textbook, and I want you to read chapter 1. It's only 20 odd pages, and you need to get used to the idea that reading 20 pages in a week per course is not is more or less what's expected of you. And so for some of you, that'll be very easy. For others of you, that is going to be a chore that you're not quite used to doing. You need to build up your tolerance for that kind of mental effort. And so I just want to signal to you that I'm expecting this of you. I know that for some of you, it'll be easy. For some of you, it'll be hard. And strap in. That's what this thing is about. That's what college is about, university is about. At the end of this, so this is offered at a college, but if you transfer to University of Toronto, if you or at the end of this, if you go to U of T, if you go to York University, this will count as a university credit for you. So you can make this happen for yourself. And the next step is to read chapter 1. I'm going to post short videos and I'm going to post longer videos. I'm going to post a couple of short screen capture videos to show you the keystroke steps that you need to go through and the clicking you need to go through to do the different assignments. And so you can look for that in the next few days, in particular for the discussion board. It's pretty straightforward. I'm almost certain you'll be able to do it without the video, but I'm going to do that. The other thing, the very last thing, I'm going to make these videos available not through Zoom, but through YouTube for a variety of reasons that I might or might not discuss with you. But so that I'm going to download the recording of this. I'm going to upload it back to YouTube, and I'm going to post the link to the YouTube video to the course website, and that'll be available later in the day, every Monday for our section. Okay, so thank you very much, all of you. I hope all of you have a great week, and I will hopefully see all of you next week. And thank you for turning on your microphones and your videos, and I hope, and I'll see you next week. Okay, thanks a lot.